Welcome to the Influence Factory podcast. This program is dedicated to support professionals who have a desire to develop their digital business influence so they can navigate through a fast-paced, constantly growing digital world. We invite newcomers as well as our family of business influencers to a place to play, share ideas, questions, tips, and guidance with other thought leaders around the globe. Sit back and enjoy our program with your host Dean Delisle as he interviews guests. News and commentary are provided by Jackson Delisle and Monica Hacker. Power Move lessons are provided by the Influencer Marketing Department at Social Jack. And production, editing, and distribution is provided by the Social Jack production team.
Today's show is brought to you by Planable. Planable.io gives your social media team everything they need to really move their creative process forward. It allows you to preview social media posts as they are live, real time. No more screenshots, mock-ups, spreadsheets. Your clients can review content from within the platform. And do you have anything to say about it, Monica?
It's a great platform. We've been using it now for a month. I love it. It's a game changer in the content world. I highly suggest it.
Yeah, go to Planable, Planable.io to start your free trial today. This week's influencer guest is Don Yaeger. He's the son of a Methodist minister who was born and raised in Hawaii. He and his wife, Jeanette, and their two children, ages 11 and 10, live in Tallahassee, Florida today. Don's been active on a number of charity boards and currently sits on the national board for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, which I love for America. It is like an amazing foundation. Don's reputation as a world-class storyteller gave him the platform to share lessons of high performance on a variety of talk shows, including Good Morning America, Fox and Friends, Nightline, CNN, Oprah Winfrey, and now the Influence Factory. So Don, welcome today.
Thank you. This is, I can now call it a career. It's like, so it's good.
You hit that milestone.
Oprah was so yesterday.
Right. So thank you. I haven't seen you for a few months since you were here for the unveiling of the famous statue at Soldier Field for Walter Payton, right?
Yeah, that was such an incredible day and just a wonderful opportunity to spend time with the Payton family. They're just among my favorite people, and the folks that have given me a chance to be involved in storytelling, with Walter's life was really incredible.
Yeah, that's super cool. And what's interesting is I have so much that I want to cover with you today, but one thing that fascinated with me, is it true that you scored on Michael Jordan?
If that's the only thing that anybody watching this remembers about me, that's awesome. But yes, it's true. And yes, and it was in a one-on-one competition in which that was the setup. Was Jordan was there to and he gave 20 of us the opportunity to go one-on-one with him.
Wow.
And I became in the history of that event, which he had done for 9 previous years, I became only the 6th person to score on him. So
wow.
It was a pretty big deal.
That's cool. That's cool. Congratulations. That had to be awesome. I was a season ticket holder during those years and was fortunate enough to spend some time in those floor seats. And I've got to tell you, because you're a basketball junkie, and so I like, college basketball way more than pro for myself. But just sitting on the floor, if you've never done it, is like the most amazing differentiator. Because we used to sit up, in the stands and whatnot. But the minute you have a floor seat, it's like a whole different game.
Well, yeah, I don't think fully appreciate the size of the individual. But forget the size; it's the strength and the endurance and the physicality of it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
it's different than what most think. It is certainly not. It is certainly a contact sport.
I'm telling you, I never realized how much it was. And I'll tell you, if you're even close to the path when that ball starts bouncing towards you to go out of bounds, just expect that there's going to be people flying over you. My wife literally caught 2 of the players as they were diving over us at one point. It's like, yeah. You're supposed to get out of the way. You're not supposed to grab on. She goes, I didn't know.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
So before we get to, here and now, if you will, when I sat with you at breakfast, you had like this amazing story about how you got started as really to what I consider you one of the top motivational speakers, out there in terms of helping us understand how to get to that level of greatness for ourselves that we have within ourselves, which I believe, has to do with, the athletes. And, I played football and wrestling, and there's that place you go when you believe there's nothing left, but everything's on the line, and you need to push through and get to that next place. And as I'm going through some of your material, I'm almost flashing back to those times, but you didn't start there. So tell us a little bit how you got to today, if you could.
Yeah, no, I again, you referenced father was a preacher, and grew up in Hawaii and lived in Japan, and moved to Indiana when I was in high school. And but for me, kind of one of the defining moments occurred. I certainly. I went to college for a degree in journalism and was offered a job right out of school at a newspaper in Texas. And I was packing up day after I graduated, headed to Texas, stopped in Indianapolis to spend a couple days with my parents. And, as you do on your way to your first job where you're not going to be paid very well, you're trying to figure out what you can steal from the house. How many pillowcases and towels, mom won't miss. And I was literally standing in a driveway with my father, and he challenged me. He said, "Don, you're gonna, just because of the profession you've chosen, this opportunity to be you're going to be a journalist, where you're going to be in the presence of, and you're going to sit next to some of those who the rest of us would give anything to talk to. You'll always ask the questions you need to. I'm sure you will. But what I'd love, Don, is for you to start thinking today about a question you'd love to learn the answer to from each and every one of these folks that you're getting access to. Is there,
wow.
Always ask something that will grow you, right? Which I thought was pretty cool.
That's cool.
Do your job, but grow at the same time. And so the question I settled in on was, if you could name for me a habit, something you worked to develop that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors and maybe even your peers,
right?
What would that habit be? What was the thing you think that allowed to put you into a different category? And what fascinated me was, so I started asking that question as a young reporter, and over the course of my career, this is how old I am, right? I asked it, we know at least 2,500 times, because I had a whole series of notebooks just with the answers that these folks would give me to that question over the course of all those years. And when I retired from Sports Illustrated a few years ago, I sat down with those notebooks and asked myself and started to calculate out the answers. What came up most frequently? What are the things that I was learning that I could use, and how might those look? And what I came to was that there were 16 answers that came up most often. So I kind of built them into a bookmark, which we've laughed about a little bit, you and I, earlier, a book, and even a speaking career around if you had access to the very best in the world and you could learn from them, here's what they'd tell you. And what fascinated me was that none of them, and we're talking the best, right, credited a physical gift for what allowed them to be different than their competitors.
Wow.
Because they all believed there was always someone out there bigger, stronger, faster, right? Where they were locked in was mental, emotional, spiritual disciplines that they could work on and develop, that they absolutely know separated them from those that they were competing against. And so for me, that was my big takeaway. My big aha was that if I'll never have their physical gift, but I can work on their disciplines.
Yeah, I like that. And then when you were at Sports Illustrated, wasn't there a moment too where there was a transition of you just being a writer to starting to go out, right? Where they offered you to actually travel, and were you speaking at that time, or was it more just going from the office to the field?
No, I was always on the road. I mean,
That's what I thought I remember, right?
So, but for me, there was my good fortune is that Sports Illustrated had its own little speakers bureau, right?
Right.
And so they actually had a little arrangement with advertisers mostly, that if you were bringing a whole group of people to the Masters, right? And one of the writers was available, the writer could come by and, maybe at the end of your cocktail hour, kind of entertain and regale with a few stories. And I grew to love that. I loved the idea and the opportunity to end up out in front of people. And they were gracious enough to continue to give me those chances. And I realized that I enjoy storytelling. That's my gift. And that if I can then tell those stories both verbally as well as in writing, that I might have that speaking could really be on the horizon for me, and it worked out. It's worked out. I mean, I took the retirement package they were offering up 10 years ago. I've gone out, and now I'll do 70 speeches a year, all around the globe, just getting a chance to, as my wife says, I tell stories I love about people I love.
That's cool.
But they're not just stories. They're stories that lead you to an application and a lesson, right? How do you learn the lesson? How do you apply it? If I wanted to replicate that lesson from some great, what would I have to do to replicate the lesson? And that's the other thing too, is that it wasn't just straight up storytelling. It's storytelling with a purpose, if you will, right?
Yeah. And I like the fact of how there's lessons packed in there. Now, one of my good or people I reference all the time is John Wooden, and you mentioned him. You and I spoke about him, and tell us a little bit. I mean, I was just fascinated how you had the opportunity and the way in which you spent that time with him. So can you just go into that a little bit? I was just touched by that whole.
Yeah,
story.
no. So Coach Wooden was in obviously out in Los Angeles after he retired. And for those of your listeners who might not know who he was, because it's
oh, that's right.
It's been a few years since he last coached. He's the greatest college basketball coach to ever live, right? He won on the Division I level. He won 10 national championships in the last 12 years.
Yeah,
of his career. So that's a statistic that's already hard to fathom, if you will. But the key too for him was that it wasn't just about winning; it was about developing. Like, how to develop people. So as it happened, but he remained revered even after his retirement. People wanted to come learn and pick his brain. And so I'm a few years into my career at Sports Illustrated. I hear a story that Shaquille O'Neal is actually out. He's the young star center for the Lakers at that stage, right? So he's already at the Lakers. And I heard he was regularly going to sit down and learn from Coach Wooden. And I thought that was really crazy. Shaq's 26. Coach Wooden was 88 at the time.
Right.
Other than basketball, what do these two have in common? And I asked, and Shaq's college coach said, "Oh yeah, these are mentoring sessions. Like, Coach Wooden is mentoring Shaq." And I thought, that's crazy. So I asked for an opportunity to kind of come along for one of them. I was allowed, and it was fascinating. They never talked about basketball, right? They were talking about how to be a better dad, how to be a better father, how to be a better team leader, how to be, how to respond into your community. And it was truly mentorship. Like, it was Shaq asking questions, coach offering guidance, and Shaq taking notes. It was pretty cool. And so we got up, and as we did, I looked at Coach Wood and I said, Coach, you know, you're obviously one of the most extraordinary men on the planet. How does someone become mentored by John Wooden? That's pretty cool. And he looked at me and he said, you ask. And I thought, gosh. And I said, how many people ask? Because you got to imagine, it's got to be hundreds, thousands. Right. And he said, not as many as you might think. He said, most people immediately take themselves out of the equation by never even asking, right? They're sure that no one will accept, so they don't even ask, which is, I mean, what a great nugget of wisdom that was, right?
Wow, right, profound.
So I went away and I worked on a little story and anyway, called back, talked to Coach Wooden, and when I'm talking to him, I said, you know, Coach, it's about a month later, I said, Coach, as we were standing there, it felt like I was supposed to ask. And he looked at me and he said, what took you so long? And from that moment on, there was about 12 years, there was 12 years left in his life. It was pretty incredible. Every other month, basically, for those 12 years, I flew to California for a day with John Wooden. And, you know, just unbelievable opportunity and great lessons. And he's just pouring into me. And it was not about basketball, right? It was about how to be a better leader, how to be a better influencer, about how to conduct my life in a way that other people would want to follow me, right?
Yeah.
And then a few years into that, we actually kind of made a decision to write a book together on mentorship. And so we did, and that book came out on Coach's 99th birthday.
Wow.
So cool, right? And then, you know, he didn't live to 100. He passed away a few months later, but I was able to parlay all that he taught me into some lessons I get to teach today, and it was pretty powerful.
That's super cool. And one of the things that always admires me about you is that you know, you give credit to so many people, but I also want to give credit to you that you've been a great person and not just tell these stories, but just like now there's lessons in the stories. And in my most recent book, I talk about the power of asking, and I got chills again as you told this story, because it's resonates so much to me, where the most significant turning points in my life have been when I embraced my fear, or when I've put myself one down to somebody else and just felt like I wasn't deserving of the ask. Mm. And I heard that in your message again. So I just want to acknowledge you for sharing that with all of us. That I think that's a great secret to life that I think a lot of us miss out on.
Yeah, because again, I think a lot of us are caught up in, as Coach said, we walk ourselves out of the equation before the math ever starts, right? And so, how do you keep that from happening? Well, the key to that is having the willingness to put yourself out there a little bit. Right. Maybe risk a little rejection and embarrassment. But the thing I think you learn is that the people you were probably meant to be in a relationship with, you know, they're probably going to say yes in the process of that ask.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other people, or one of the stories that resonated with me is that, you know, being here in Chicago, I was fortunate enough that the Chicago Bears were one of my clients at one point. And so I got to go up to Hallis Hall and spend time in the war room and see that, get inspired by the whole process of scouting and drafting and that whole process of that. But then one time I'll never forget. I was younger, in my 30s, and as I'm walking through the hallway, I look up and it's Walter Payton. And he smiled and he stopped and he was just like, "Hey, how you doing?" And he was just like, wanted to spend time with me, like was willing to just talk to me. And I was almost like, why is he talking to me? Like, to what you just said, like we almost take ourselves out of the equation. And I just took it in and, shook his hand and thanked him for being such a dedicated player. And as I was even playing through, high school and whatnot, I was just like, wow, it was like, I always thought about how hard he worked. And he was a great inspiration to many of us that played football. But you got to spend some critical last moments with him while he was with us. And you wrote a great book about him. So I'd be curious to hear maybe a little bit about the experience, but what did you learn from him?
Well, I think the thing that really stood out, just for the context of your listeners and those who might be, again, not fully aware of Walter, hard to believe. I know this isn't running. This is live today, correct?
This is live today, and then it gets distributed over the next couple of weeks. It'll go out to podcasts. So
yeah. So 2 days from now, on November 1st. Will be the 20th anniversary of Walter's passing, which is crazy, hard to believe.
Yeah.
But I think about him all the time, almost every day. I mean, there's, my son, shortly after my son was born, Walter's widow sent a pillow to him made from one of Walter's jerseys.
Wow.
And, so he has a 34 Payton pillow that he gets to sleep on. And, just remnants of that relationship that I had with him are all around me, and I love that. And the time with his children and wife. But Walter passed away at 46 years old. Crazy, right? That the greatest athlete of one of the greatest athletes of our time, certainly the greatest football player, in my opinion, passed away so young of a very rare liver disease. But Walter, I had the opportunity, working with his family and others, to end up spending time, much of the last 10 weeks of his life with him for his autobiography, which we wrote together, called Never Die Easy. And so there he was. He was my hero, right? And Walter, as I said, he'd be 66 today. So he's basically 10 years older than me. But when when he was in his prime, in his 20s, I was in my teens, and wishing I could high step like that, and and hit holes like his, and he was just amazing. So being offered the opportunity to kind of be around him in that most vulnerable window, right, when he and to be trusted by him was incredible, because he knew he was not going to be alive when the product of our work, the book, would actually go live. So it was pretty incredible that the thing you asked the question, what maybe most surprised me, I think it was this idea that great as he was, he constantly invested in others.
Yeah.
And he totally believed. So ironically, because we've already talked about John Wooden, right? One of the things that happened was that while I'm with Walter, he actually handed me a frame with a little quote in it that he had cut out of a magazine years earlier. And the quote said, "You cannot live a perfect day without doing something for someone who cannot repay you."
Wow.
And that was his life mantra, right? But the originator of that quote from that magazine was John Wooden.
Oh my gosh.
How does all that happen? Like, you know what I mean? It's kind of these crazy confluence of events that in one person's life, it feels odd and funny and crazy that I got the chance to be in relationship with all these folks. So just an honor, and it's an honor to be trusted by people to tell their story, because that's the coin of the realm, right? It's what we're trying to be, as a really good and impactful partner in good storytelling. and then hope that those stories don't just honor and reflect the people who are engaging me, but teach and instruct those who are getting a chance to experience them.
Right. And and I do love the lessons. By the way, if those of you listening go to donyaeger.com, you'll have more than enough books to read, and you'll have a hard time deciding which one to take first.
My children would say you shouldn't decide; they need you to buy them all. That would be,
and they're all wonderful, by the way. So just being a Chicago guy and, witnessing obviously the World Series for the Cubs for the first time in a long time, I saw you post a picture with your friend.
By the way, you didn't witness the World Series the last time the Cubs were in it. It was,
right.
30 plus years ago. So it's long before it was long before you, man.
Yeah, our time, right? Well, I mean, the one in my lifetime. How's that?
There you go. There you go.
But I saw you embracing, the new manager for the Cubs, right, David Ross, and Grandpa. And so as we were always watching, I had such an admiration for him. While I could just feel his presence and his leadership. And I'd be curious to know your takeaway and maybe any thoughts that you have of him leading, being the next leader of this club.
He is so ready. It is just, I had a good fortune of spending several hours with him just the week before all that came down. And he's been waiting. He's been ready. He's been preparing for this for years, right? This is not something that just happened. He is David Ross is at his core. You may call him a backup catcher, whatever you want to do, but at his core, what he is a highly competitive person who wants to get the best of himself and the best of others around him. And if there's anything you want from a manager, right? It's somebody who knows what they know, knows what they don't, surrounds themselves with people who will continuously make them better, and in the process of that, build something. And I really love the way Theo Epstein, the president of the Cubs, put it when he was talking about what, there are a lot of people that thought, the Cubs won in 2016. Wow, it's pretty cool. They're an amazing team, a lot of young talent. They were set up many people thought you could, set up, you should win a bunch, right?
Yeah, right. That's the thought.
Baseball's a weird sport.
It is.
And I live down in the South where many of us appreciate the Atlanta Braves. And, when you think about a team that for 14 straight years won its division, but then ended up winning one World Series in that entire window. That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But it's because it's a weird sport.
It is.
People can get hot. But that's what life is. Life is a weird sport. Competitive anything. I like baseball as a conversational model for business often, because I think it's the most like what the rest of us go through of any sport. And they play 162 games, right?
Right.
The best team in baseball will lose 60 times in a year. If you can't get good at losing, if you can't learn to put a loss behind you, if one loss turns to 5 every time you lose, you'll never be good in that sport. The best hitters in the sport fail 7 out of 10 times, right? It is a failure sport, as is, frankly, most of life, right, for us. And so if that's true, then what we really, what we need to do is try to figure out how do we get ourselves, how do we make sure that we remain present? How do we we stay in the moment? And, it's about this at bat, it's about this pitch, it's about this minute, not what I did last minute or what I might do in the future. It's there's so many places, in my opinion, where I could teach a lifetime of business lessons just out of the game of baseball.
Well, and I'm just smiling here because, baseball, even if you look on my LinkedIn profile, I go, I love baseball. And I talk about playing football and martial arts and wrestling and everything. But it was I grew up with Sandlot, where you worked your butt off every day not to get picked last. And then someday you would become captain, and so there was this constant, like you said, but you're the first person in a conversation where I've heard that other than me that says, business is just like baseball because you play so many days, so many games. It's a grind.
Right.
And just so fascinating by hearing you say that. I'm doing a new book. You've inspired me to continue to do books, by the way. So thank you for that. And I'm gonna interview you for that section if you're okay with that, because that to me is like I don't think people understand. It'll be funny when people say they don't understand baseball. But here's one of the things I heard on. I listen to sports every day. And read about it every day. So what they said about David Ross is they said, well, you'll notice that a lot of good managers are actually catchers. Now, I was a catcher, pitcher, and center fielder because I had the arm for all three. And one of the most interesting things is they said that a lot of managers were catchers, but when you think about the role of a catcher, and I never really thought about it until this week, and then David Ross being a good pick, is that they are constantly running the game from behind home plate in communication with the dugout. And I don't think a lot of people realize they're almost like the general manager on the field.
Yeah, they would be, the pitcher is the star, right? That's who is, but the catcher's the only one facing the other direction, right? So it's the only one who's really kind of looking at where are we positioning everybody? Are they in the right place? Are they in the right place for the pitch I'm getting ready to call?
Right.
Are they, and there are a lot of people that might not understand the dynamics of baseball, but the pitch that's coming could have everything to do, if you know the batter, if you've done the proper intelligence on who it is that is standing there with a bat right next to you. You can see how their feet are set up. You know what they're looking to go to do. All of these things are. It's an awareness, and catchers are, and they have to be engaged in every pitch. Not that every other player isn't, but they are. Obviously, they've got a skill set that's required, but it's there's a place there that makes, I think, catchers unique when it comes to the opportunity then to go and lead entire teams on the field.
Yeah, and much like a business, like you said, you have to make constant adjustments, and you have to be aware and present in the moment. You can't think about yesterday or the last 10 things. You can certainly learn from them, but you don't carry all that baggage with you to today's game. You have to just think about the next pitch, the next inning, the next, hitter, and it keeps you alive and checked in.
Absolutely. And so I think, again, all that is what makes this, I think it's going to be a great choice. I think the Cubs did well. Again, I'm very personally biased. I love David. I wrote a book with him, obviously. Right. And I consider him a friend. And so I think that good things will come of it. He's also, though the Grandpa Rossi thing was a cool, funny,
right.
The guy's 39, basically playing with guys half his age, right? And all that was a funny meme, and it was a great, they bring him a little scooter for him to ride at spring
Right.
training.
Put Walker. Didn't he give walkers to everybody in the clubhouse too?
No, they gave him one though. And
oh, that's right. That's right. I knew there was some exchange of a walker in there.
And so there's that whole, all that's fun. But the truth is, what made David Ross who he was as a player over the course of a career was that he's just he'll give it to you if he doesn't think you're giving it to the team, and and his willingness and openness to hold people accountable will be a place that will be really important to that team.
And I think that's certainly interesting as well. So we have and it sounded like you and I were both watching at least some of this World Series going on right now. If you're if it's October 30th, and so by the time some of you hear this, you'll know who the winner is. We don't quite yet know. But what I noticed, and they finally talked about it last night, is that there's not a single one of the teams that has won at home through this series. The other team has beaten them in their own house. So talk about a psychological crazy game. It's that they can't win at home.
Well,
at least yet.
And I actually blogged about that. I do leadership blogs for Forbes, and I have a blog that's out on that came out yesterday. When it was only 5, the first 5 games, obviously now it's 6 when we're talking here. But in that process, right? I mean, 6 games in which the visiting team has come out as the victor. And these are 2 of the best home crowds in baseball. Right. So it's like, it's not as if the crowd didn't give them their best. It's just that sometimes, the one thing, so I actually kind of dissected a little bit, just experience and sports and things, and you'll get this, as will many of your listeners. But that sometimes there's you believe that playing at home should give you an advantage, and so in some ways maybe you let your guard down a little or whatever. Sometimes being on the road together as a team allows you to pull together because it's just you against the world, right?
Yeah.
Which everybody, we play better when we all. I mean, one of my favorite parts of Michael Jordan, right, was here he was best in the world, and Bulls were best in the world, and they would win record number of games, and yet they would routinely kind of say, "No one believes in us." Who are you kidding? But it's the narrative you're trying to tell yourself that it's us against the world. Well, that's pretty evident when you're in a baseball stadium and everybody is yelling at you, and you're pretty close to the fans in some ways, and they're questioning your paternity and other things, which is, so I actually think sometimes being on the road gives teams a little bit of an advantage because it bonds the players together, right? We only have each other.
That's true.
Right? We only have each other right here. And then secondly, I think it's kind of cool in that sometimes again you let your guard down a little bit because we have this inherent advantage, right? We're playing at home. Maybe it's not an advantage if you aren't as razor sharp as you would be otherwise. So I'm not suggesting that's what happened here, but I think that's those things often combine in a lot of these places.
Yeah, super cool. One of the other things I just want to touch on, while I know we only have a few minutes left, but you wrote a book about great teams, 16 things, right? And this is one that I'm actually recommending to some of my CEOs. So when you go on the website, donyaeger.com, go to Great Teams. But can you give us 1 or 2 nuggets? I know it's tough because there's so much in there, but could you just give us 1 or 2 nuggets for those of us that are in business or responsible for a team of lessons that just really, would help us out here?
Sure. Real quick, I'll give you 3 real quick. The first is the number 1 answer that came up. I went on the road to sit down with the best team builders on the planet, right? Not just in sports, but also in business, everywhere, all the way to New Zealand, where I get a chance to interact with the All Blacks, the rugby team there. Incredible team. But in the process of that, one of the things that came up, the number one thing that came up, was that, everybody says they want to all work. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves, right? It's I'm not going to generationalize, but a lot of people assign that to millennials today, right? They all want to be part of something bigger than themselves. Well, what does that mean? Well, what that means is that, but what that how's that put on us is that most of us who own or operate or run businesses actually can give them an opportunity, those who work with us, to be part of something bigger than themselves. But we have to create organizationally what we call in the book feel it moments, right? Which is the opportunity to feel why what we do matters, who it matters to. What happens if we disappear from our spot in the universe, right? What if our company no longer delivers for those clients? And if you understand how what we do matters into the lives of other people, and how it might even matter into the lives of the people they serve, what happens is you begin to feel that responsibility that you are, in fact, part of something bigger than yourself. And when people feel that, what happens is that they start showing up different for work, right? Yeah. Because now I'm not just making widgets. If it weren't for the widgets that I'm making, 300 families would be out of business. And, oh, by the way, those widgets go on to help develop cancer, are used in machines that today are keeping cancer patients alive, or those widgets are used, whatever, right? And there's always something. You just have to know and think about, why is what you're doing, why does it matter? And most of us haven't quite given that the thought that it's not just as simple as know your why. It sounds good. Yeah. It's know why what you do matters, and and how can we make those who work with us feel that matters. And there's some amazing examples. If they go to that website, I think it'll all be clear. The second and third one that I want to throw out there is that we all talk about how camaraderie is a really valuable tool within a great team. But if you get highly competitive human beings in an environment, camaraderie, as wonderful as it is, doesn't always happen. Dysfunction is real as well. Right. So we should desire and look for ways to build camaraderie, and there's plenty of good reasons or ways laid out in the book. But then the secondary piece of that is, don't imagine for a second that dysfunction isn't a part of a great team. Dysfunction exists. And anybody who says it doesn't, this is all about, we're all in kumbaya, is lying to each other. Yeah. So how do you shorten the life cycle of every dysfunction that comes to your team? Being thoughtful and all of that is really important. And then I know the last thing that you and I wanted to talk about is that out of all of this, we've built this virtual learning course, this Journey to Greatness, that I think was part of our close together. But it's actually an opportunity to get the chance to take some of what I've learned over these years, and it's our first ever virtual course. It's doing really, really well.
It's awesome. Yeah, I love it.
And I know you've taken you've invested in taking part of it. I know there's some good stuff going on there, but it's an opportunity for people to learn without, for example, me needing to be in front of their office place or whatever it might be. And for those in your listenership who are interested, I know there are some ways that we're going to partner on that together. Yep. So I think you'll share some of that later. But Absolutely. I hope that people, if they get to the website, whatever it might be, and they'll look at that journey to greatness, I hope it will be helpful to them.
No, and I think it partners well with what we teach, and my philosophy, which I learned at Hallis Hall and with the Bulls, on social teaming and making sure that we're conscious about the relationships and the impact that we make with each other. Your stuff is so synergistic with that, and just it walks in parallel with that. So I do want to encourage you to to check out Don's website and Journey to Greatness. So it's super cool. And so Don, this is the time of the program where unfortunately we're out of time. And it always goes so fast when I'm with you, but I want to, I always ask our listeners and our students, I really ask them, and we ask this every week, but I really want you to take what you learned today, one thing that resonates with you, and teach it to somebody today that you care about. It could be your child, it could be your coworker, it could be somebody that you're mentoring, somebody that you want to mentor, but take something that resonated with you and share that with someone today so that it's fresh in your mind and you wire it for yourself as well as for others. So please be a real net giver out there and help others with what Don has shared with us today. And so Don, I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I miss you when I don't get to see you, so we're going to work on that next. And then I see some great things for both of us together in 2020. So I'll circle back around with you on that. And then I actually was just talking to another conference about you as well. So we'll circle back on that. So, but I adore you. I love your messages. I love your books. I wish I could read them all. I'll get there someday, but I'm picking them off one at a time. So that's how we're doing it.
Dean, I appreciate you, and I'm grateful for the relationship and the time you've given me with those you're influencing today.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we'll see you soon. And by the time we listen to this on a podcast, we'll have a World Series winner.
Exactly.
All right.
See if anybody at home won.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All right, Don. Well, listen, have a great one, and we'll talk to you super soon. And thanks, everybody, for listening. Take care.
Thanks, buddy.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Influence Factory podcast. We welcome feedback and suggestions. You can provide these by visiting our website at www.myinfluencefactory.com. And if you are interested in Social Jack's 90 Days to Influence program, you can simply go to 90daystobusinessinfluence.com and simply ask for the next steps. While our program airs regularly on Zoom webcasts and Facebook Live on Wednesdays at noon Central, we invite you to download episodes on your favorite channel: YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, and who knows where else in the future. We will also provide occasional on-location live streams with special guests that we will announce in our community Facebook group, Business Influencer Alliance, as well as on all Social Jack channels. Our mission is to help you build your digital business influence with this podcast, as well as inspire, educate, and entertain those who are hungry to collaborate in a cool place with cool business professionals just like you.